विनाशकरं विघ्नेश्वरं नमामि. लोकस्वातन्त्रकरं देवं विघ्नेश्वरं नमामि. श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे तारकं सर्वपापेभ्यो लोकस्वातन्त्रकारकम्. This I'm speaking on behalf of Vinod Mahavadi. He was talking about Gayatri Mantra Japam and its virtue and worthiness for good and betterment of life on earth. That's a fact. Personally, I have a lot of respect and a lot of understanding that it is plausible, it is feasible, and it is probable that this can happen. Any prayer that comes from the heart with some vedana, some kind of a pida or some kind of a bada within our heart, if the prayer comes out straight and looking and wishing for the larger good, not necessarily personal selfish thing, but for the larger good, if any prayer dedicated to that has very high probability, possibility, and feasibility of being successful. This is also a personal quest of mine, I'm suggesting. What I'm seeing right now is a global warming, a great danger for most of the life on Earth. It's not going to be easy to solve this problem, but some of us, with dedication, those who have earned the respect of Gayatri and have learned those mantras along with some Shanti mantras, if submit a prayer, the chances of it being successful is quite a bit high. To the extent I make sense, okay, this is feasible, this is certainly must be done to do it. When I was in second year of my engineering, this is about 50 years ago, in 1971, first time I was studying thermodynamics, I came to the understanding by analyzing the data that's available and the formulas that were being stated, that there was going to be a massive thermal pollution in long run, and that thermal pollution will cause a great danger in the world. But at the time I was just 20 years old, roughly speaking, and I didn't realize how bad it's going to get. Over a period of time I forgot about it, but it was in the back of my mind that someday the world will face a serious problem because of the thermal pollution caused by the heat engines which emit carbon dioxide and also a lot of heat while producing energy for the benefit of humanity as it was thought. About 40 years later, I came to realize that thought was true, but I forgot almost until then. Today, what we're going to see is this global warming. There are a lot of problems: typhoons, droughts, excessive powerful rains, and plus any other dangers such as the COVID-19, which is also part of that kind of a thing to solve the problem. The world population has grown to 7.5 billion from anywhere 1.5 billion about 100 years ago. And along with the population of people, the cockroaches, mosquitoes, and other disease-causing species have multiplied, whereas general trees and plants and grasses and also most of the animals have died out. They were wiped out, eliminated. This is not in good standing or for the good of the world. This is going to be a dangerous thing. We cannot alone change this. A prayer has a possibility and a probability and feasibility. Could help change the minds of the large population and reverse the trend and possibly build the rest of the ecology in the whole world, and also solve the world's problem of reducing the rains, reducing the typhoons, reducing the disease. As in Vedas, they say Adi and Vyadhi. That's what we are facing in this part of the Kali Yuga, or whatever you want to call it. This part of the world is going to suffer tremendously in the next 100 or even 100,000 years, because this global warming is not going to go away anywhere anytime soon. So why do I have this understanding that it can help in long run, even to some of the people, if it can help? How does it is possible? I have a couple of examples I can quote, and maybe you can see this. The prayers which are heartful have to happen. That will help. Most of you don't know this, and most of the people on earth don't know. Probably almost nobody knows about this. But this happened about in 1962, which is roughly 60 years ago. On February 3rd, 1962, it was Sunday, Amavasya, Octagonal happened. Octagonal is 8 planets lining up, and believe me, that was the Surya Grahanam time, and also it was Sunday, Amavasya. You can see that. 8 planets lined up. When this was seen about 3 or 4 months prior to, a lot of Indians, almost talking about 400 million Indians at that time, majority of them, had a concern, had a fear, had some kind of a internal pain that they thought the world was going to end. And there were a lot of newspaper articles at that time, and people thought, a danger will happen. The sky will fall on earth, the oceans will rise, and typhoons will come, and whatever other destruction possible will happen. And somewhere in the November 1961 through 1962 March, there were a lot of worships in India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Rajasthan, Gujarat, all the way to the eastern extent of the country. They have done a lot of japams, tapams, yajnams. Even in Manthani, there was a massive yajnam performed. I remember somewhere in the December time frame, 1961, December time frame. And I was 12 years old at the time. I thought it was one of the heartful prayers that were performed to help save the world from the imminent danger that could come from the Octagonal. But the Sunday came and Sunday went. Nothing happened. And everybody thought, there were some people who were ridiculing. Nothing happened. So, all these yajnas and all these worships, everything was stupid. I remember I was standing in the prayer line of the school, high school. At the time I was in the middle of school, 7th grade. The headmaster was giving a lecture in the morning on the Monday, that is February 4th. He was abusing that Brahmanas are thieves. They took all the money, they wasted all the money of all the people, and it's all humbug. Nothing happened. Standing in the prayer line, I kind of thought, for a 7-year-old, for a 7th grade 12-year-old, that was really bad speech that the headmaster was wrong and he was speaking out of his mind and his abuse was wrong. But at the time, I couldn't do much of anything. Several days later, I talked to one of the wise men in Bantani, Kollara Sitaram Sharma. I was learning Sanskritam from him along with few other kids. I happened to see him on an evening, just alone, and talking. I kind of explained to him what the headmaster said at the school. He kind of said, these things are not visible sometimes. They come across, these dangers do come across and go, and nobody notices it. Something has happened or is happening, and which we are not able to see. Someday, he told me, you will be able to figure it out. You will be able to recognize what has happened and what did not happen, what was supposed to have happened. Well, that was almost 60 years ago, and period over time, I almost forgot about it until 2011. Sometime in April, American Public Television put out a program called Cuban Missile Crisis. And I saw that program in the night, and first time when I saw it, nothing happened. But I saw it second time about a month or so later, and suddenly I realized what happened there. I back calculated from the date of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was October 28th, Saturday, and October 29th, Sunday, which is in 1962. It took me a while to calculate backwards and see what has exactly happened. It seems that around February 3rd of that week, sometime closest to that February 3rd in 1962, Soviet Union was loading tens of thousands of nuclear weapons and missiles in merchant ships, and stealthily they covered it with tarpaulin and sent it to the Cuba. That was Ankurarpan, that is, putting the seed down. Almost 9 months later, the American CIAs detected that the Cubans were erecting, or the Soviet Union was erecting in Cuba, short-range and long-range missiles that could endanger the United States of America. John F. Kennedy was the president, and he was absolutely mad, but he kept his cool, kept his calm, and he threatened to blockade, and that blockade by October 28th became so dangerous, so on the edge that the world could end. There were 12,000 plus nuclear weapons on the American side and 12,700 nuclear weapons on the Soviet side. Even if a quarter of them were successful in being exploded all over the world in each other's territory, that would have ended the whole world. It was said, according to the public television program, that on October 28th, some of the people in White House were thinking that sun won't rise on October 29th, Sunday. The world will end because the B-52 bombers were roaming around the Soviet Union and allies loaded with nuclear weapons to explode upon them. And Soviet Union was ready and had several weapons aimed at American territories. Plus, they had their bombers ready to take off. And it was almost at the edge. The world could have ended. For whatever reason, if you want to think about it, the Sunday came, the sun came up, the world did not end. And what happened? For the first time in my life that day, I realized the power of the prayer so powerful and so easily observable, but so difficult to realize it. It took 60 years for me to understand that that prayer of the Indians, 400 million Indians who went, or at least maximum of out of the 400 million, who prayed with their heart to save the world. And it almost came to the last second of the death of the world 9 months later. But at the last minute, it didn't happen. I first time understood the power of the prayer, that it can happen. Sometimes it is very difficult to realize and recognize these things, because these things sometimes take long time to realize. And the fruit comes, and when it comes, how it comes, we don't know. And unless you have a persistent curiosity and be able to see the sequence of events, it's very difficult to understand it. It's very difficult to know about it. So my sense is that prayer had something to do with world not ending. Another example, you can see yourself that it was Balagangadhar, Lokmanya Balagangadhar, who started with a Ganesh prayer. And that prayer, 90 years later, with Mahatma taking over, Mahatma Mohan, the most beautiful soul on earth, taking over, and 90 years later, delivered, the independence of India. Several Indians joined with him with that prayer, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Rama Rama. Those two letters, Lokasatantakaram, they are Tarakam Sarvapapebhyo, Lokasatantakaram. That's my understanding, my realization. Not only India was liberated, but the whole world was liberated. Is it possible for somebody to recognize that the prayer succeeded? Well, you think yourself. In my mind, in my imagination, in my calculation, that intention, that prayer, that sincerity did succeed in both cases. And in both cases, it gave the fruit people were seeking. And the prayers were heartful. The prayers came from the bottom of their heart, and they were not selfish oriented. They were not looking for personal profits. They were looking for the larger good. The same way, I'm hoping and I pray that the Gayatri Japa, which Vinod Mahamadi is trying to propagate, because the Shankar Mutt, the Adhipati of Shankar Mutt in Kanchi Kamakoti, has been explaining that is the right thing to do. He's right. And I support it, and I hope people recognize that these things will happen. And the current problem today is global warming. And Adi and Vyadhi, these are the two things that are going to cause the majority of the problem in the next 100 years, even 100,000 years, because carbon dioxide, which has been discharged by burning coal, by burning fossil fuels, is not going to go away anywhere. Continuously, every day, it is going to cause one or other level of serious problem to the life on earth. Not just people, but the rest of the life, animals, plants will die in massive numbers. The prayer of the Brahmarishis in the ancient times has been attributed to have saved the world many times over. This prayer of Gayatri has potential, has feasibility and the probability to achieve a similar thing in long run. Not today, not tomorrow, not in next year, not in next 10 years, not maybe in even 100 years, but in long run, it will help save the life on earth. So I do it. I do Gayatri Japam every day with the intention of Bhuta Mangala Karanat, with the Shanti mantras speaking in favor for the whole larger life. Think about it. Okay. Hopefully you will do it too. Thank you.